I watched the bartender and caught his eye. Raising my empty glass, I gestured for more. This would be my second bourbon in the last 2 hours. I wasn't one of those people who like to drink, but until a month ago, I'd spent too many mornings wondering what I'd done the night before. My problem is that lately the more I drink, the more I drink. So now I'm limited to 2 drinks. Anyway, I'm sitting here waiting for a friend to come through the door and rescue me. This is a story that will bring you back to me sitting on a bar stool. My name is John Henry Kelly. I was named after 2 of my great-grandfathers. It may not be a big deal to some, but I am proud of my heritage. At 6 feet 2 inches tall and 210 centimeters tall, I am slightly larger than average. I think the story began in high school. By senior year, I had developed a reputation for being a bit of a hustler when it came to young ladies. In fact, my nickname was Slick. The reputation was well justified, and I had dated, loved, and dumped many girls in and around our school. To put it in today's terms, I was a player. As a rule, most of the girls I ran with were players too. There was no harm in that. The only exception to this rule is the reason I am telling this story. The county fair opened the same day as my high school graduation, and all the graduates went to the fair to celebrate. Leslie Ann Bennett was also at the fair. She was the daughter of Thomas Bennett, minister of the largest Baptist church in town, and I happened to meet her at the fair. She was and still is a very attractive young woman in a good way. Casual, until you see the glint in her eyes and realize that there's a devil inside her just waiting to break free. I felt like I was the one to let that devil out. We spent most of the evening together at the fair, but she had to go home with her cousin Jenny. I arranged to meet her the next night at the fair. When we met the next evening, we just walked past the fairgrounds and down to the river. We had already seen all the sights of the fairgrounds and I wanted to see the ones Leslie suggested. Walking together, holding hands, we found a very quiet little beach. It was very secluded and away from the path. We stopped to talk and get to know each other better. Of course we did, we got to know each other. We spent over 2 hours hugging, kissing, stroking, and caressing each other. Somehow during those hours I managed to release the devil living in Leslie Ann Bennett. By the time we left the riverbank, Leslie was no longer a virgin. I lived up to my bad boy reputation and seduced the young lady. This is very important, I didn't force myself on her. I really tried to slow things down at least 3 times. I really tried to behave myself. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. Leslie wasn't one of the typical girls I ran around with. She was a nice girl and the daughter of a preacher. However, the devil was let loose and none of us could resist the temptations he offered. As usual, by the next day I had all but forgotten the words of love I had whispered to Leslie. That was my usual modus operandi. I said what the girls wanted to hear, but I didn't necessarily mean it. Oh, I could at the time, but usually it was just a way to get close to some young girls. Most of the girls I dated knew I was a player and didn't believe all the crap I was talking. That wasn't the case with Leslie Ann Bennett. Leslie believed my words and thought she had found the love of her life. She called me the next day and started babbling about when we would see each other again. Leslie also mentioned meeting the family, getting engaged, and other very scary ideas. At least they were scary to me. I tried to be gentle with her. I really didn't want to hurt her, but I didn't want her plan to get married right away either. Eventually she realized that I wasn't her knight in shining armor, and we weren't going to ride off into the sunset together. The next day the excrement hit the rotating cooling unit, or the shit hit the fan. Mr. Bennett came to visit me in the garage where I worked part-time. He wanted to know if my intentions for his daughter were honorable, in other words, if I was going to make an honest woman out of her. I told him that I had no intentions, honorable or otherwise, toward Leslie. Mr. Bennett informed me that financial arrangements would be made in the event of my marriage to Leslie. He said that a house, a car, and a well-paying job would be provided. Mr. Bennett, Leslie is a very nice girl and we had fun together, but that's all it was, a little entertainment, I told him. You have taken advantage of a young, impressionable, and innocent girl, John. I intend to see to it that you fulfill your responsibilities, young man. From that moment everything went downhill. He left, muttering something about revenge, about not being allowed to commit adultery, and some other wonderful things. A week later, my supervisor called me into his office. He said he was letting me go. I asked why, and he said he could not afford to keep me. I told him I would accept fewer hours or a lower hourly rate if that was what he wanted. I wanted to work with cars and it was a good experience. Eventually he broke down and told me that Mr. Bennett was putting pressure on him. Mr. Bennett was on the bank's board of directors. The bank owned the mortgage on the garage, hence the pressure. I sat in my office for a minute, digesting this information. "Don't worry about it, boss, it's time for me to move on anyway. You've been good to me, and I've learned a lot. Thank you." The next morning I packed my few belongings into the truck and headed west. I figured I could always find work fixing cars and support myself. And that's exactly what I did. I found work in Arizona at a used car lot. Cars would come in that needed some work and I would fix them up to sell. I was able to fix most of them cheaply, increasing the car dealership's profits. About 8 months after I started working in a car service center, one of the owners and I opened our own auto repair shop. He gave the money and I did the rest. The share was 60-40, of which 40 was mine. Becoming a partner in the business was a big accomplishment for a 20-year-old guy. Our garage was a big success. Things were going great for about a year and a half, and then my profit share started to decrease. I talked to my partner about the decrease in profits. He said that costs had gone up and business was down. That wasn't true. We had so much work that we were booked up 3 weeks in advance. I ran a garage and knew that some things were now costing more, but we were just passing that increase on to the customers. The increase in cost did not justify the shortfall my partner was claiming. I made inquiries and found out that my good old partner had a gambling problem. That's where the money was going. I showed him the results of my spying and he confessed. He offered to buy me out when I threatened to go to a lawyer to get my money. The business was worth more than the $100,000 he offered, but I just wanted out. I have no idea where he got the money, nor did I care. I took the money in cash and fled to my hometown. A few years later, it came to light that my partner had borrowed money for a buyout from a loan shark. My former partner ended up with broken legs and no business when he failed to repay the loan on time. Not much has changed in the old hometown. A few businesses disappeared, but a few new ones opened. One of them was an ice cream parlor, a favorite place of non-drinkers and kids. I don't know why, but I looked in because I didn't really like ice cream. I loved bourbon, but alcohol was a bit of a problem for me, so when I started in the car repair business, I had already quit drinking and didn't think a soda and ice cream would knock me out. The first person I saw when I walked in the door was Leslie Ann Bennett. She was sitting on a stool behind the counter with her back to me. Leslie was with her cousin Jenny. Jenny was the first to notice me and apparently said something to Leslie. Leslie turned around and saw me. Her face flushed and I thought she was blushing. Wrong as always. I walked over and said, "Hey, Leslie, Jenny. What's up, guys?" The next thing I knew, my face was on fire and my ears were ringing. Leslie spanked me so hard that I think my father got a headache. Wow, that girl knew how to hit. I raised my hand, and Leslie kind of flinched. She probably thought I was going to hit her. I just rubbed my face and looked at her. "Anyway, there's nothing wrong with your hand," I said. "That's good, see you ladies." I walked out of the store without buying any ice cream. It was an awkward situation, and it was the only way I knew how to handle it. Actually, come to think of it, I probably got what I deserved. The first thing to do was to find a place to live. I found a small 2-bedroom apartment. I needed a base of operations until I could figure out what to do. On the third night of my stay in my new place, the doorbell rang. I was just finishing my second and last beer of the day and talking on my cell phone. Who could that be at my door? I opened the door and was shocked. Leslie was standing there. I disconnected the bell and stared at her for a few seconds. "May I come in?" asked Leslie. "Let me put my soccer helmet on first and then come in," I jokingly replied. I saw her flinch. "Just kidding, come on in. What can I do for you? By the way, how did you know where I live? The company I work for owns this building. The office manager told me about your move. I came for 2 reasons. Are there any? I asked. First of all, I want to apologize for the slap. You didn't deserve it, and I'm sorry, Leslie said sadly. It's okay, an apology isn't needed or expected, and maybe I did deserve one. You said 2 things, what else? Leslie hesitated for a second, then asked, why? Why what? I asked. I was pretty. Sure, I knew what she meant. Why did you leave town? I know I scared you a little, but I thought we could talk. You left me like I had rabies or something. And then you left town. Why? Truth time, I asked. She nodded, and I continued. Your father came to me. At first he tried to pay me to marry you. He offered me a house, a car, and a job. When that didn't work, he pressured my boss to fire me. I had no job and a powerful man was after my hide, so I left town. My father, I might have guessed. I didn't like you then, but I thought it was funny that you left town. You didn't seem like a man who would run away because of me. I'm sorry, my father had no right to confront you. That's okay, it worked out, maybe it's for the best. About that night by the river, John, I need. Hold on, girl, it's my turn now. I have a couple things to say on the subject. If your father hadn't interfered, I would have called or met with you to discuss things with you. You were going to call me? Leslie looked surprised. Yes, it is. Look, Leslie, we had a good time the other night, but then I started to feel uncomfortable. You weren't the kind of slut I usually hang out with. You were special. If you remember, I tried to slow things down a couple times. You're a virgin, and I shouldn't have been surprised by your reaction after the ward. I wish I could have talked to you and explained myself, but I didn't get the chance. I'm sorry, John. I seem to say that all the time, don't I? Well, I'm sorry for all the trouble. What's the pity? Have dinner with me tomorrow night, said I. What? Just dinner. Nothing else. I wish I could do what I should have done then. Besides, you're a beautiful girl and I'm lonely. What do you say? I don't know. You hurt me. I know you were, Leslie. I was that guy back then, and I'm sorry, but I'm not that guy anymore. Have dinner with me, please. She looked at me with a small smile and said, okay, but just dinner, nothing else. The next evening I took Leslie to a neighboring town about 20 miles away to a nice steakhouse. We spent the entire evening socializing, talking, and actually becoming friends. It was the first of many dates. We started meeting once a week for dinner or a movie. Then twice a week, then 3 times, and finally we couldn't be separated and a crowbar. We were spending 4 or 5 nights a week together. The relationship went from just friendship to something more, at least on my part. It happened over the course of 2.5 months. We were exclusive to each other. In the old days we would have dated. Nothing was said about us being exclusive. It was just the way things were. I had no problem dating only Leslie and basically fell in love with this cute girl. We hadn't slept together yet, as I was trying to be a good boy. I got a job at a repair shop and things were going pretty well for me. Thanks to my job and my bank account, I was okay with money. We usually went to the movies on Friday because we changed movies every Friday. Leslie said she had some stuff with her mom this Friday and wouldn't be able to go. I started to wonder, this was the 4th date she had blown off in the last 2 weeks. Maybe she was bored with me, or maybe I was just being paranoid. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. Remember this. I decided to go back into sniffing mode. After getting burned in business, I have a trust but verify philosophy. This was one of those times. Maybe everything was fine and deadline disruptions were just inevitable. Or maybe they weren't. I'd find out what was going on. In our small town, there are only 3 or 4 places to go on a date. You could go to the movies, go to an ice cream parlor, have dinner at one of the 3 places in town, or go to the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace had a bar and grill where there was dancing every night and a live band on the weekends. If Leslie was going to go somewhere, I didn't think she would go to a movie or an ice cream parlor. The people there knew both of us and would probably tell me something about us not being together. The Crystal Palace was where I would start. There were a couple other bars in town, but they were small neighborhood-type establishments. There was no excitement for dating in them. Our date was scheduled for 7 o'clock, so I waited until 9 o'clock and then pulled into the parking lot at the palace. Leslie's car was in the front row. I guess her mom wanted to have some fun. So Leslie was helping her mother tonight, at least according to Leslie. Leslie and I have been to the palace a few times, but not enough to become regulars. It's unlikely that anyone could have turned her in. I walked around to the back door and entered the building. There's a corner at the end of the bar from where I could see most of the place and not be seen unless someone was really looking. I didn't think Leslie would be looking for me. I sat down on the last bar stool in that corner and looked around the dance floor. Leslie and Jenny were sitting at a table at the far end of the dance floor. Leslie was wearing a short skirt and a low-cut top that showed a little cleavage. I would have been upset if Leslie had blown off our date to go with Jenny. It wasn't about the date being blown off, it was about her lying. Like I said, I was upset that Leslie had lied to me. But more than anything, I wanted to kick someone's ass over the 2 guys sitting with them. Leslie and the guy she was obviously with seemed very comfortable. He straddled her chair and put his hand on her knee. They were talking and laughing together and my heart was breaking. I watched them for about 30 minutes, how I don't know. They danced 3 or 4 times and the slow dances were the hardest for me. Not that they were kissing, but Leslie wasn't even supposed to be there. Besides, it didn't look like it was the first time they'd been together, and then I recognized him. It was Bill, the guy she dated before I came back to town. I didn't know why they broke up, and I didn't really care. I had Leslie, at least I thought I did. Apparently, I was wrong. So, what do? I asked myself. If I walked over to their table and ran into Leslie, there would be trouble. I was so angry I could hardly control myself. I mentally pictured it. If I walked over and asked Leslie what she was doing, her companion would probably say something. I'd bust his head open, and then his handmaidens would step in. He'd get his head bashed in, and maybe I would too. I didn't know if I could handle the 2 of them. I wasn't afraid, but I didn't want to get my ass kicked or go to jail if there was a better way. The old me said, kick ass or get your ass kicked, be a man. The new me said, okay, but if possible, let's find a better way. We can always go back to kicking ass. Then another thought occurred to me. Leslie and I were neither engaged nor married. We were dating, exclusively I thought, but only dating. If we were married, I'd kick his ass for getting involved with a married woman. Another thought occurred to me, the guy wouldn't have been there if Leslie didn't want him there. So it's all on her conscience. The guy probably didn't know about Leslie and me, or if he did, he was just reacting to Leslie's signals. It wasn't really his fault. But that didn't mean he got a free pass. I had a plan, and if he didn't get in my way, fine. If he doesn't, one of us gets beaten up. I waited for a break in the band's performance, drank the bourbon I was sipping, and walked across the dance floor. I stopped about 10 feet from their table and just stood there waiting. Leslie and the guy were laughing together about something and only looking at each other. Finally, she looked up and saw me. Leslie did a double take, and her eyes got really big. She put her hands up to her face and started shaking her head as if to say no, no. Jenny turned around to see what Leslie was looking at and I heard her say, "Oh shit." Leslie stood up and started to walk around the table and headed towards me. I just raised my hand to stop her and she sat back down. Walking up to the table closely, I asked, "Leslie, where is your mom?" I didn't realize she liked this place. We could have brought her with us last time we came here. Leslie didn't know what to answer. I pulled a picture of Leslie out of my wallet and placed it on the table in front of her. I removed and added the St. Christopher medal she had given me. The belt buckle she'd bought for me at the rodeo joined the small pile in front of her. As I leaned over the table to say my word, her companion put his hand on my shoulder to stop me. His friend stood up, too. "Stay out of this, Bill, it's none of your business," I told him. "You really don't want any of it." "You're upsetting the lady, you'd better leave," he said. Leslie gestured for him to sit back down and said, "Don't get involved, Bill, this is between John and me." "So this is the guy who tried to steal my girlfriend while I was gone," Bill said. He stood there trying to decide what to do. "Buddy, you're about to make a very bad mistake. I don't know if I can take both of you, but I promise that if we hit it off, Bill is going to the hospital no matter what." At Leslie's insistence, he sat down, then his wingman sat down as well. "Nice move, guys. That's it, Les. I'm done and gone, and so are we. See ya," I said. I turned my back and walked out of the bar. I needed to leave while I could still control myself. I was about to lose control when a guy touched my shoulder. My truck took me back to my apartment. It must have been a truck because I don't remember anything about the road. My cell phone started ringing before I even got home, and I just turned it off. I knew who it was and I didn't want to talk to her. When I got home, I took the bottle of Jack Daniels out to the patio and sat down. I decided I would see who would last longer, the bottle or me. After a couple drinks, I changed my mind. I didn't want to drink myself unconscious again. I'd been through this before, been through it, gotten that damn t-shirt. I went back to the condo and put the bottle away. 2 drinks was enough. About an hour after I got home, the doorbell rang. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I guessed who it was. Looking through the telescope, I was surprised. It was Jenny, and it looked like she was alone. I was curious, why Jenny? Leslie I understood and almost expected. There was only one way to find out, so I opened the door. "I need to talk to you, John. May I come in?" "What can we talk to Jenny about?" "You got what you wanted. It's over between Les and me." "That's what you wanted, isn't it?" "You're right, I haven't liked you since you dumped Leslie after that night at the fair, but that's more important than my feelings for you." Leslie is horrified. She sits in the car and cries. She wants to come in and talk to you, but she's afraid. Why should she cry? She got what she wanted. A few months of me cradling her until her boyfriend came back. Yes, I know she and Bill dated before he went to Mexico for work. I came home right after he left, and Les and I started dating. He was gone for about 3 months and we dated for about 2.5 months. I was filling in for him until he could come back. I haven't quite mushroomed yet. A mushroom? Yeah, keep her in the dark and feed her shit. I don't need to talk to her. Tell her we're good. It was fun and now we can both move on with our lives. She can be with Bill and not worry about me. It's not what she wants, it's you, Jenny said. It's not going to happen. I hesitated for a minute, then said, "Go after her, Jenny, let's get this over with. I have things to do tomorrow, and I need to get some sleep." Jenny went out to the car and brought Leslie back to the apartment. I was sitting in my chair when they came into the living room. Pointing to the couch, I motioned for them to sit there. Leslie still had tears running down her cheeks. I sat back and waited for Leslie to start. She was the culprit here, and I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Leslie continued to stare at the floor. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Finally, I had had enough. "Let's hit the road, Leslie. I need to get some sleep because I have a lot to do tomorrow. You wanted to talk to me, so talk or leave. Either way, I don't care." "John, it's not what it seemed," Leslie said. "Let me tell you what it looked like to me, Leslie. I could be wrong, but it looked to me like you blew off our date to go out with this guy. It seemed to me that you lied to me when you told me you were going to help your mother. It looked like you went to dances and parties with Bill. You seemed to let him touch you, hug and kiss you. All in public, in front of people we both know. If I hadn't shown up, would you have gone home with him? What am I supposed to think, looking at the way you treat him, the way you used to treat me? Looks like I was a convenient distraction while you waited for Bill to get back from his job in Mexico. Is that about right for how things looked? Am I missing something about you lying to me? I'll bet the other dates that went wrong were for the same reason. In my opinion, that's called lying, and dating him is called cheating. So tell me, Leslie, where am I wrong? I wasn't going to go home with Bill. He and I have never had intimacy. You're the only one I've ever made love to. Tell me why, Les. Why lie? Why date another man when we were supposed to be exclusive? Tell me why, Les. Bill and I broke up when he went to Mexico. You came back to town and were so nice that I started dating you. I believed I had fallen in love with you. Then Bill came back and called me. The feelings I had for him kind of came to the surface. I went out with him to see if my feelings for you were real. I didn't want any unresolved issues to get in the way of John and me. Anything else, Les? Today is the last time I see Bill. Please, John, try to understand. You hurt me once, and I felt I had to be sure of my feelings for you, she replied. I needed to stop and pull myself together. I didn't want to scream and yell. I just wanted to express my frustration and how much it hurt. Jenny said, "Come on, John, it's no big deal." She wasn't sleeping with that guy. Les was just dancing and having a good time. Stay out of this, Jenny, or I swear I'll throw you out the door. This is none of your business. Just sit there and be quiet. It took me a minute to gather my thoughts. I didn't want to attack Leslie. I just wanted to tell her how I felt. Les, I truly believe that if you had come to me and explained your feelings, I would have allowed you to date Bill. It's easy to say that now, but I believe I would have understood. I wouldn't have liked it, but I think I would have been able to live with it. After what happened between us in high school, I can understand you being a little worried about me. I already told you that I'm no longer the guy who hurt you. I've changed, and I think for the better. What bothers me is that you're lying to my face. Helping your mother. You were at a party with an old friend of yours. Judging by the way you were hanging all over each other, I don't believe this was the first or last time you planned to see him. In my opinion, that's cheating, and I won't accept it. I've already said tonight, Les, I've had enough and I'm leaving. It's over, so run back to Bill if you want. You don't have to lie anymore. Leslie cried again. She said, "Please, John, I love you. I was wrong to lie to you, I'm sorry. Let's go back to the way things were. I know you love me. Leslie, I love you and probably always will. But your lies have broken the trust between us. I love you, but I can't forget the lies and cheating. I always wondered who you were with if you came home late or didn't answer your phone. The suspicions were eating away at us. Let it go, Leslie, it's best for both of us." Leslie and Jenny left, and I went to bed, but I never got any sleep. Over the next few days, Leslie tried to get me to change my mind. I refused to even think about reconciliation. The lack of trust could destroy us soon, and I finally got Leslie to understand. She wasn't thrilled about it, but she understood. I think we parted as friends. The next day I took a big step and started my own business. I took the money from the partnership and opened my own repair shop in a neighboring town. I moved there to open a repair shop because the town was almost twice the size of my hometown. At the same time, I was only 30 minutes away from my hometown, so it was still close. That was quite an accomplishment for a young man my age. It was a little difficult at first, but soon I had 2 guys working for me and we were scheduled at least 2 weeks in advance. The reason my store is successful is because we do things right the first time and stand behind our services. That was 2 years ago. Unfortunately, I don't get to do cars as often as I would like. Most of my time is taken up with paperwork, management, and customer service. The economic downturn has not hurt my business, on the contrary, it has increased my workload. People didn't buy new cars that often, and the old ones needed to be maintained. Consequently, business was expanding for me. I decided to hire another mechanic and an office manager. This would allow me to get back to working on cars. The store was closed and I was sitting at my desk trying to line up expenses. I heard someone knocking on the front door of the store. Looking out the office door, I saw a woman at the door. I got up, walked to the front door and yelled through the glass that we were closed. "Would you mind taking a look at my car? The lights are getting dimmer and dimmer, and I need to get home. Please, I'll make it worthy of your attention. I'm partial to beautiful women." She was tall, slender, with blonde hair and freckles. The perfect Irish girl. I was confused. I opened the door and told her to come in. "Thanks, I need to get home as soon as possible." "I'm Julie O'Reilly," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm, not like a normal woman's handshake. "John Henry Kelly," I replied. She's Irish, I thought. Bring it on, let's see what the problem is. It was a vintage Mustang convertible. It gave me more information on how the car was behaving. I opened the hood and did my magic, finding the problem in about 5 minutes. I explained that her alternator had failed and the car was running on battery power. This was the cause of the dim light. I explained that the car would stall and not start very soon. "Can you fix it? I really need to get home as soon as possible," she asked. "I can't fix it today since we don't have the parts, but I can have it ready by the end of the day tomorrow. You can use the phone at the store and call your husband to come get you. I'll work until he gets here. I'm not married, but I can call a cab. Will you stay until he arrives?" I nodded in agreement, and she called. When she picked up the phone, she was frustrated. It seemed like a 40-minute wait for a cab. "Tell you what, Julie, I'll close up and give you a ride home if waiting is a problem for you. I don't usually let you get this worked up, but I need to get home. My dad is home alone. He gets up and moves around if no one stops him. He broke his leg in a motorcycle accident and needs to stay on his feet, so I accept your kind offer." "Thank you." I closed the store again, put Julie in my truck, and drove her home. During the 30-minute drive, we talked a lot and became friends. She worked as an office manager for a real estate company. Her mother had passed away and her father stays with her when not on business trips. Julie listened to my story, and at her insistence. Anyway, the time flew by quickly in nice house, I thought as I pulled into her driveway. Julie had invited me to dinner as a thank you for the trip, and she didn't refuse. I met her father and we became instant friends. I was sorry to leave, but enjoyed a very good dinner and great company. The next day Julie drove to my store to pick up her car. She wanted to pay extra for the ride home, but I refused. We argued for a minute, and I came up with a compromise. "Buy me a cup of coffee at the diner next door and we'll get even. After all, I got a great dinner as a thank you for last night." She agreed to coffee. Thus began our romance. We discovered that we had common interests such as music, country, classic rock, R&B, similar tastes in movies, and similar views on politics. It was amazing. She was a woman like me, and certainly better looking. We went on a few dates, and I started to fall in love with her. Hard. I'd been burned before, so I made it clear that I wanted an exclusive relationship. She just smiled and said sure. Our time together became more and more intense. We went camping together, fishing, going to the movies, and just sitting at home talking. It was wonderful. After about 8 months into our relationship, 7 months 2 weeks and 4 days to be exact, but who was counting, I asked Julie to marry me. She laughed and cried at the same time. And she said yes. We were to be married in 6 months. We were 3 months away from our wedding and there was a bump in the road. The bump turned out to be a mountain in the road. It was Thursday and I was closing up store when I had a visitor. Jenny came into my office and asked to speak to me. I was very surprised, as I hadn't seen her since the night Leslie and I had broken up over 2 years ago. "What are you doing here, Jenny?" "I need your help." "Actually, Leslie needs your help, John." I didn't know who else to ask. "Leslie and I broke up over 2 years ago." "Why did you come to me now, Jenny?" Jenny asked me to just listen to her. She told me that about 1.5 years after Leslie and I broke up, both of her parents were killed in a car accident. Leslie had no money except for a part-time job. The house her family lived in belonged to the parish, so she had to move. Leslie moved in with Jenny for a while, but Jenny was leaving for a job in another state in 6 weeks. 2 weeks after the move, Leslie and Jenny were at an ice cream parlor and ran into Bill. Leslie hadn't seen him since that night at the palace. Bill and Leslie started dating again. Leslie moved in with Bill the same week that Jenny went out of town. Last month, Jenny returned to her hometown. Her out-of-state job had closed due to economic hardship. She ran into Leslie at the gas station, and Jenny couldn't believe how different she looked. She had lost weight, had bags under her eyes like she hadn't slept well, and had a large bruise on her face. Jenny asked her what was going on, but Leslie didn't want to talk about it and left. Jenny watched Leslie and saw her around town. Leslie always looked so damn attractive. Almost every time Jenny saw her, she had a new bruise, a split lip, or a black eye. Finally, she'd cornered Leslie in the ladies' room at the gas station and demanded to know what was going on with her. Bill turned into a jealous, violent asshole. He slapped Leslie almost every day. If she took too long to go shopping, or didn't bring dinner on time, or just for fun, he slapped her. Leslie tried to leave twice, but she had nowhere to go and Bill always found her. She was afraid to go to the police. She is afraid of what Bill might do to her. Leslie had left Bill again and was hiding in an abandoned cabin outside of town. Years ago, the cabin had been part of a church camp and hadn't been used in about 10 years. Jenny wanted me to go after Leslie and help her get away from Bill. Jenny said, "Leslie doesn't know I'm here. I know you don't owe me anything, but you said Leslie is still your friend. She really needs help. Please, John, I don't know who else to turn to. I need to think about it, Jenny. I don't know if I want to get into it, but I'll think about it. Give me until tomorrow, around this time, and call me. I'll have an answer then." I decided I should talk to Julie about it before I did anything. I knew what I wanted to do, but Julie was part of my life now, and she had a right to at least know what was going on. If I did what I thought I was going to do, I could go to jail if things went south, or maybe lose my store altogether. That night Julie and I had to make final decisions about flowers and other things. She kept talking about colors and arrangements and stuff. I wasn't paying attention. "Okay, John, what's on your mind? You haven't heard a word about colors or anything else. Where's your head today?" She was smiling as she said this. "I have one decision to make, but I can't figure out what to do, Julie. I need your opinion, but before you say anything, you need to hear the whole story." "Okay? Sure, John, what's wrong? What can I do to help?" I started at the beginning, with the county fair, the time after I got back to town and broke up with Leslie. Julie wasn't very pleased to hear about my ex-girlfriend, but she listened without interrupting. When I finished, I asked her what she thought. "Let's see, you want to escape and play hero with your old friend. In the process of rescuing her, you might go to jail or lose your business. Is that it, John?" Julie seemed angry. "You forgot about helping a woman in real trouble. She has no one to turn to, and maybe I can help. I can't make the decision for you, John. You have to make it for yourself. Just remember that if you decide to help her, you'll jeopardize our upcoming marriage and our future together. Are you saying that if I help Les, you and I are finished? Is that what you're saying, Julie?" Now I was a little pissed off. Julie looked at me for a moment, and then sort of hung her head. She was upset and trying to collect her thoughts. "It's a simple question, Julie. Yes or no is all that is required. Why should you help her?" Julie asked in a quiet voice. "If it was an old buddy from school or work, you'd react that way," I objected. "No, but you weren't in love with an old buddy. You were in love with Leslie." "That's the difference," Julie replied. The key word in that statement is were. It was a long time ago. You never answered Julie's question. "If I help Les, are we done with you?" "I don't know," she said. I was stunned. I never thought there would be resistance to my helping a friend in need. I thought we'd have a heated discussion about how best to help me. In a way that wouldn't land me in jail. I had no idea Julie would be adamantly opposed to me helping Leslie. The thought of an old friend didn't cross my mind. I got up to leave and drive home. We usually stayed together, either at my place or hers. I told Jenny I would give her an answer tomorrow at the end of the day. When I make my decision, I will call you before I meet with Jenny. Julie only nodded and turned away when I tried to kiss her goodnight. Really, said I. I walked away and tried to slam the door shut, but it was locked with one of those locks. It was an empty gesture. The next day I spent most of the morning pondering the problem. I couldn't make up my mind. The situation with Leslie and Julie kept running through my mind. I decided to work on the car so I wouldn't have to think about her. In the midst of a complicated engine repair, my mind cleared. I guess thinking about the problem in the background gave me the impetus I needed to make a decision. I called Julie to let her know of my decision and to discuss our situation. When Julie answered, I said, "I'll try to help Leslie." She hung up without saying anything. I guess it was a long shot 10-4 that Julie would break up with me if I helped Leslie. Now I had to face the most difficult task of all, losing Julie. How could I help Leslie so that, first, I wouldn't go to jail, and second, I wouldn't let Bill bother Leslie again? These are all good questions that I didn't have answers for right now. I had to come up with something right away, because Leslie couldn't stay in that cabin much longer. Jenny called just as I was beginning to think of an idea that met the criteria I needed. I told Jenny that I was going to help Leslie, but wouldn't be able to do anything until Saturday night. She needed to escort Leslie to my store in the evening, after dark. I told Jenny to drive up to the back of the building and let them in. Leslie could stay in the little apartment above the store. I used it sometimes when I was working late. She'd be safe there until I put my plan in motion. They arrived at 9 o'clock, and Jenny was right, Leslie looked awful. "Thanks for helping me, John," Leslie said. "I don't know where to go now, but at least I'm away from Bill." "Leslie, if my plan works, you'll have to testify against Bill in court." "Can you do that?" "Just give me a chance." "What's your plan?" "Don't worry about that. You and Jenny will stay here until Saturday morning. He doesn't know you're here, and even if he did, he wouldn't be able to get to you. It will all be over tomorrow night." "I hope so." Saturday morning I talked to my 2 mechanics, told them my plan and asked for their help. They agreed to help. "Oh, what was my plan, you ask?" "A simple plan, painful, but simple. Bill used to go to the palace on Saturday nights, as Jenny had told me. I was going to get him to assault me in front of witnesses. The plan was to have Bill arrested, charged with assault at the very least, and I would file a civil suit against him. Also, while he was in jail, Leslie filed domestic violence charges against him. I believed we could get him in jail for a long time. At least long enough for Leslie to clear his head. The alternative was to kick his ass, arrest him, charge him, sue him, and Leslie would still be in danger. I know, not the best plan, but it was all I had. When I confronted Bill, I'd be wired for sound. We hoped he would incriminate himself and the tape would serve as evidence to get him convicted of domestic violence. On Saturday morning, Jenny was going to take Leslie to an abused women's shelter about 100 miles from home. If the plan worked, Leslie would come back to press charges. If it doesn't work, she stays at the shelter until we figure something else out. Leslie could always go somewhere far away, but she wanted to stay here in her hometown. That might not be possible since she would have to get out from under Bill's control. Saturday night I parked in the side parking lot of the palace, waiting for Bill to show up. At 8 o'clock he pulled up in his truck with another guy. I waited until 9:45 to give them time to have a couple drinks and then went inside. I spotted Bill as I passed the bar. He and his friend were sitting at a table near the dance floor. If the empty glasses belonged to them, they certainly weren't slurping down drinks. They were drinking quite a lot. Good thing I needed it to get a little out of hand for the plan to work. I stopped at the bar, grabbed a beer, and nodded to my 2 co-workers. They had come to the bar earlier to scout the situation. Their role in the plan was simple: keep me from getting seriously hurt or killed. If Bill and his buddy jumped me, my guys would keep his buddy from joining Bill. they were also to try to keep Bill from killing me. I intended to piss Bill off, it was the only way to get the results I wanted. When the band took a break, I walked across the dance floor and stopped in front of Bill's table and about 10 feet away from him. I just stood there until he noticed me. Then I grinned and laughed and shook my head. That got his attention. "What do you want, John?" Bill frowned and didn't seem at all sober. "It's no big deal, Bill, I'm just surprised you have the nerve to show your face in public," I teased him. Bill was having trouble seeing. He stared at me and asked, "What are you talking about?" "I mean, you can't hold on to your woman, and you should be ashamed of that." "You mean Leslie?" "I have her well under control. She's visiting her aunt in Moberly and will be back tomorrow." "Bill, she doesn't have an aunt in Moberly. She came back to me and I hid her in a motel outside of town." "Looks like I stole your woman and I didn't even have to try. You must be a real man to have your woman leave you for me twice. And you say you control her? That doesn't seem to be working very well." I tell her off if she steps out of line, Bill admits. "Leslie is afraid to cross me because she knows I'll send her to the hospital again if she crosses me." "You must not have hit her very hard, because she's back with me." "I hit her hard. She had to go to the ER twice after I pinned her and once to the dentist. Those times I put the fear of God into her." "Really, when was that?" I hoped he was drunk enough to answer. If so, I could move on to the second part of the plan. "I went to the dentist last June. It cost a lot of money. The ER was in August and again in October. She became a believer after that," Bill boasts. I wrote down the confession, and now he had to attack me. "Leslie didn't stay a believer for long, she came back to me. She said she wouldn't mind a beating if the sex was good, but you couldn't even do that properly." "You're lying," he shouted. "No, she said you weren't very good in bed and that you had a little dingus." The last part of the conversation seemed to have knocked Bill out of the conversation. He growled and lunged across the table at me. His buddy lunged at me as well. The plan was to let Bill throw a few punches and then get the hell out before I got seriously hurt. But it didn't work out that way. His buddy got to me first and landed a blow to my head, after which I went down. That hurt like hell. I looked at Bill and didn't notice his buddy. Then Bill came over to me, picked me up, and punched me in the jaw. I saw stars and fell down again. I was on my knees and trying to regain consciousness when I saw my coworkers grabbing the other guy. Bill didn't stop that, he started punching me in the ribs as I lay there. He picked me up and knocked me down again. This time I covered myself to protect my ribs. I thought enough is enough, where is my support? If I can get up, I will fight back, I can't take this abuse anymore. The palace employs bouncers, some of the biggest men I've ever seen, and 3 of them had arrived to stop the fight. Thank God, I thought. They grabbed Bill and subdued him. His buddy looked around, decided to take a walk, and left. One of the bouncers helped me to my feet. He helped me into a chair and told me the sheriff was on his way. I asked my friends for the names of the other men to use as witnesses and waited for the law. The sheriff who arrived conducted a brief investigation and arrested Bill. He said he was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, drunk and disorderly, destruction of private property and disturbing the peace. Bill had a bottle in his hand when he pounced on the table, and that was assault with a deadly weapon. He also broke the table, and that is already destruction of private property. As he was being handcuffed, Bill began cursing at the sheriff and tried to break free once. The sheriff added resisting arrest and interfering with an officer in the performance of duty. That's it, keep pelting Bill with charges, it was good. Monday I was asked to come to the station to sign a complaint against Bill. That Saturday night I had an unplanned emergency room appointment. I had several injuries that needed to be treated, and 2 cracked ribs were the most serious. So much for the plan to not get seriously injured. Oh well, life is a bitch and then you die. On Monday, I learned that Bill will stand trial on all the charges the sheriff mentioned and a few more he threw in. Bill was denied bail because of the threats he made against the sheriff and deputies. I contacted my business attorney and asked him to file a civil suit against Bill. It was a nuisance lawsuit. Bill had nothing. The lawsuit was needed to keep Bill busy and make him forget about Leslie, at least for a while. Monday morning I also made 2 calls. One I made happily and the other I wasn't so sure about. I called Leslie and Jenny, gave them the news and told Leslie that she would have to go back and press charges against Bill. That way we would have a house full of charges against him. He was going to be a guest of the state for at least 5 years. The other call was to Julie. The last time I called, she hung up on me. I hoped she had calmed down a bit and would talk to me. I waited until early evening and called her house. This was not the kind of conversation one should have at work. Julie's father answered the phone. At least he seemed glad to hear from me. He told me that Julie had told him about what I was doing. That's a good and honorable thing to do, John. Don't let my stupid bitch of a daughter convince you otherwise. The moment of truth arrived and Julie came on the line. Hi John, what do you need? A very cold Julie. I just wanted to tell you that it all worked out. Bill is going to jail and Leslie can move on with her life. It's nice for both of you, isn't it? Julie told me. There is no us for Leslie. She's just a friend who needs help. Don't you realize that, Julie? How is helping her different from helping any other old friend? You were in love with her once, that's the difference. You probably still are. You would have gotten married if she hadn't lied to you. It's an old friend you just had to help. I didn't understand at first. If she hurt you so badly then, why do you want to help her now? Now I know it's only because you still love her, John. That's not true, darling. You're the one I love, the one I want to marry, and the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. Only with you. She was in big trouble and needed help. I don't see it that way, John, and I probably never will. I can't marry a man unless I'm sure I'm the only woman he loves. I'm not sure you see it that way, John. Goodbye. Julie hung up the phone. Maybe she'll cool down in a couple days, I thought. Then I would call her and try to let her know that she was the one I loved. Wednesday night I called Julie again. She answered the phone, but she didn't seem happy to hear from me. I haven't changed my mind, John. You knew how I felt before you embarked on this mission of mercy, and you did it anyway. That tells me a lot. I think it's over between us, John. Please don't call me again. She hung up the phone again. The next afternoon, a messenger delivered a package to me. There was no return address on the envelope. Inside was Julie's wedding ring and a key to my apartment. I guess that let me know how she felt. I tried several more times to see or talk to Julie, but she refused to return my calls. I saw her around town and tried to talk to her. She would just ignore me and sidestep me. Eventually, I gave up. That same afternoon, I got a call from Leslie. Thank you for helping me, John. I don't know how much longer I would have been able to hold out. I owe you that much, Les, and I'm glad you're free of that asshole. What are your plans now? I'm currently in a women's shelter. First I have to go back to file an official complaint against Bill. Then I'll stay here for a few days, at least until the bruises go down a bit. After that, I'm not sure yet. John, is there any chance of us getting back together? I still love you and want to be with you. I only went to Bill after you left because I had nowhere else to go. Please John, I know you care about me too. I care about you, Leslie, maybe I even love you a little. But we're gone. It was over a long time ago. I forgave you for sneaking around with Bill when we were dating. I even forgave you for lying to me. I've forgiven you, but I can't get over it. Okay, John, I understand, but I had to ask you. I won't bother you again. Thanks again for saving me, John. You're a good friend, Leslie said. Stay in touch, Les, and let me know how you're doing. If you need anything, call me, Les. I'll be there for you, I promised her. Heck, I did what I thought was right for my friend, but it cost me my fiancé and my future. I spent about a month trying to get Julie out of my head. My business started to suffer, but at that point I didn't care. An old acquaintance and a new friend came to tell me that Bill was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Judging by Leslie's assault and domestic violence charges, he's going to be in prison for a long time. She also pointed out that because of my drinking, I would lose everything I had accomplished. She said it would be a shame if I fell apart after such a heroic act of helping an old friend. My new friend also reminded me that I had outlived Leslie and could outlive Julie. She told me that I needed a new woman in my life. We discussed my problem and I decided that she was right and I reduced my alcohol intake significantly. I also decided that maybe she was right about a new woman in my life. I ask her who it could be, and she replies that she changed her mind about me when I agreed to help Leslie, and that maybe I'm not such a missing person after all. I guess we'll just have to explore our newfound friendship. I heard that Leslie moved out of state to live with her aunt and uncle. She is doing very well and is planning to go back to school. She plans to get the education and training she needs to help abused women and children. Until she graduates, she is volunteering at a women's shelter. It was great to hear that she has found her purpose and is moving on with her life. So now you can join me here at the bar while I drink a second glass and wait for my friend. She's already saved me from myself. So I look forward to seeing where this friendship goes. There she is. You remember Jenny, don't you? A quote. Life goes on.